January was arguably one of the best months of the year, especially for console players, because controller players were given the long-awaited ability to lean left and right from the hip. Without a doubt, hip leaning improved the experience of console players tremendously and even improved the viewing experience of watching console players because, let's be honest, console gameplay was quite excruciating to watch back in the day. That was all we really got for a mid-season update in Operation Deep Freeze, but we didn't have to wait much longer for a huge content update in March, Operation Deadly Omen. Obviously, with this new season, we were introduced to both Siege's new operator and villain, Deimos. Over time, this guy has easily become a roamer's worst nightmare. With the ability to pinpoint exactly where a defender is located on the map, combined with a coordinated team, leaves a defender running for what's left of their life like a headless chicken. The reworked ballistic shield was also added with Deadly Omen, and man oh man did it bring an unforgettable experience to defenders. The shield went from being a one-hit melee to down an opponent, to being this blatantly overpowered weapon that when used, feels like cyberbullying. The new ballistic shield allowed users to bash opponents to the ground, dealing a significant amount of damage, reload from behind the shield, instantly vault through a fully barricaded door or window, sprint with the shield out in front of them, and free look with their head without having to turn their body or shield. I think it's safe to say shield operators got a bit of a buff that season. From here on until Operation Collision Point, players were desperate to ban Montague and Blitz in ranked because of all the trauma they had caused. Azami has also caused a lot of trauma ever since her release back in year 7, because when she first released, her Kiba barriers could only be destroyed with explosives or multiple melee hits. Bullets could not destroy her barriers. This created a problem for most attackers who wanted to remove defenders behind Kiba barriers because those defenders had access to the tightest pixel peaks. Attackers attempting to fight these pixel peaks head-on would more than often result in being eliminated, and not being able to do anything about it leads players to being a little frustrated. And so, Year 9 Season 1 brought a long-awaited nerf to Azami to where her barriers can now be broken with bullets. The last big update that came in March was the change to weapon optics and weapon mobility. Ubisoft developers began to see their creation go from a tactical shooter to a team deathmatch styled game during Year 8, and so they wanted to put a stop to that movement. And the way they went about preventing team deathmatch gameplay was by slowing down their game. The time it took to aim down the sights of your weapon was increased heavily, and the magnification of the 1.5 scope was removed, hoping players would think twice about the gunfights they were taking. Also, in hopes to prevent defenders from peeking everything so aggressively, especially outside, almost all operators on the defending team lost access to their magnified scope. This definitely didn't stop Doc mains though. 2 months later came a minor yet controversial update revolving around the secondary gadget for defenders, impact grenades. The damage from a direct impact was reduced from 60 to 40, which wasn't the biggest deal, but then Siege went on ahead and changed the distance the grenades would deal damage from 3 meters down to 2 meters. On paper, this update seems like nothing, but the main reason people were not happy with the impact grenade nerf was because it meant defenders could not open up above a reinforced wall to then later throw an impact at the ceiling over the reinforcement to break hard breach gadgets on the opposite side. Eventually, players got over it just in time for them to be upset with the next big update, Operation New Blood. Yeah, this season does not have the best reputation. The first thing that comes to mind with Operation New Blood was the reveal of the Rainbow Six Siege membership. This new membership replaced the year pass, bringing essentially the same benefits with a few extra skins at a more costly price, and fans were definitely not happy about this. To make matters worse, New Blood brought a rework to fans' beloved operator, Recruit. This was a rework no one really asked for, and changing this operator felt unnecessary because the new operators Striker and Sentry really brought nothing to the table aside from extra secondary gadgets. In the eyes of many, removing the original Recruit from the game did more harm than good because players were no longer able to run multiple recruits at the same time, making recruit rushing no longer an option for casual players. To bring to light some of the more positive features that came with Year 9 Season 2, we can't forget to mention the beautifully developed Rainbow Six Siege Marketplace. The marketplace had gone into beta testing during Operation Deadly Omen, and a select few players were lucky enough to gain entry to this beta to buy and sell limited items. After a few changes were made to polish the marketplace, all players were granted access to buy and sell, and man were people hungry for fan favorite skins. Black Ice and Glacier definitely sold like hotcakes. And while this season may be remembered as one of the worst seasons to come to Siege, there were a few good gameplay changes that came out of it, one being the Fenrir nerf. Originally, Fenrir had access to 5 Dread Mines, all of which were bulletproof unless activated, and as you could imagine, this made it extremely frustrating for players to get past without being eliminated. This new season changed how Fenrir worked, and remains the same present day, where all his mines are destroyable whether or not they are activated, which seems to be the perfect change to make him a now balanced operator. Solus was also another defender causing problems, particularly in the prep phase. If a team had brought a Solus in their operator lineup, it would be almost impossible for attackers to pre-place their drones inside the map because Solus's electro sensor had a ridiculous range, and on top of that, it could be used during prep phase. After a year and a half later, Ubisoft came to their senses and hit Solus with a nerf, big time. Solus was no longer able to use her scanner during prep phase, the gadget had to be fully charged in order to activate it, and the distance the electro sensor could see was reduced significantly. Even with all these changes, Ubisoft still wasn't happy with how she performed, and that brings us to Operation Twin Shells, where she received a bit of an overhaul. Solus was used to seeing what kind of gadget she was looking at while her electro sensor was equipped, but after this update, all electronic devices are labeled as question marks, and the only way to determine what said gadget is by using one of 3 scans from Solus's sensor. This overhaul completely changed the way players use Solus, and so much so that even to this day, not many people even use her anymore because they believe she just isn't good anymore. Nook was also an operator not many people chose on attack because she didn't really serve a super useful purpose. Little to no players get on cameras, so you can't use her ability to deceive them, and if they do, your gadget's battery may have run out of juice already. It was super inconvenient, causing her pick rate to be extremely low. However, Ubisoft had a solution to this. They made it so her gadget's battery would no longer deplete when idle, and the only time her battery does deplete is when she performs actions such as running or shooting. Because of this, Nook gained the ability to walk across the entire map while invisible. And while I've mentioned the buffs to operators who were already present in the game, we can't forget about arguably one of the coolest defenders ever added to Siege, Scopos. The development of this operator has to be one of the most creative concepts Siege has ever come up with. From the backstory to the design and then to the actual gameplay of her, a huge props to the developers for doing such a great job. While we got a new operator in Season 3, Season 4 brought along another rework for an already existing operator, Blackbeard. Over the course of nearly a decade, the Navy SEAL had undergone multiple buffs and nerfs. Originally, he had started out with an almost unbreakable face shield, making him the most overpowered attacker. But then down the road, he was given 2 face shields instead, made out of the most flimsy material imaginable. These new shields did nothing in terms of protection and were really just equipable for style. So after not knowing how to balance an operator with a face shield in a one-shot headshot game, Ubisoft took away his mounted shield and instead gave him a ballistic shield. A ballistic shield that can bash through walls. And speaking of ballistic shields, the long desired nerf for shields has finally come in Operation Collision Point. If this season isn't remembered as Blackbeard's rework season, then it'll be remembered as the season where the shield terror was finally over. Ubisoft went hard with this nerf by removing damage done to players being knocked to the floor, increasing the suppressive fire debuff effectiveness, adding consecutive guard break, and making it so shields don't have melee priority. With all these changes put into play, shields are nowhere near powerful as they once were back in Operation Deadly Omen, and the Siege community is more than thankful for these updates. Fans are also thankful for the opportunity to play across all platforms with their friends. Xbox players can play with PC players, and PlayStation players can also play with PC players. Operation Solar Raid was the first season to introduce crossplay between consoles, but now as of Season 4 of Year 9, everyone can play with anyone, anywhere. This feature was a long time coming, and after almost 10 years, it is finally here. The Siege Cup was also a long time coming, as it was originally introduced in Operation Twin Shells, yet the beta play sessions weren't available until November on PC only. However, Operation Collision Point has brought the full release of Siege Cup, and competitive players have been itching for some sort of tournament format for years, and their wish has finally come true. It's a great game mode to get your adrenaline pumping, while also having the opportunity to earn rewards along the way. The final big update that came in 2024 was the change to how Sense's gadget works. Since June of 2022, Sense has had a difficult time finding their place in the meta. They were an operator that was extremely difficult to use while also being very circumstantial. With a low pick rate for over 2 years, Ubisoft made 2 game-changing updates to them. One being the ability to turn on their projector when desired, and the other, thermal gadgets could no longer see through the light walls. Sense has easily become a more useful operator with these changes, and so hopefully we'll see them be used more frequently in years to come. Anyways, after a whole year of updates, we were given 2 new operators, 2 operators whose gadgets were reworked, yet no new maps or map changes. However, I think it's safe to say Ubisoft made up for the lack of maps by providing us with new game modes, cross-play, UI overhauls, and so much more. Siege has had a great run in 2024, and I personally cannot wait to see what's in store for 2025.